Amidst the raging blizzard, two groups of soldiers faced each other in a chaotic battle. Swords clashed sharply, blood and snow mingled, and no one knew why the fight had started. A shout rang out across the battlefield. The masked leader raised his fist high, ordering a ceasefire. The decisive sound caused everyone to hesitate, swords pausing midair. A female warrior with purple hair angrily pointed at the opponent, questioning the reason for the attack and suspecting that the order came from Kang Jinhyuk. Confusion and tension were evident on her face. The masked-beaked sorcerer angrily denied it, panting after the battle, while threatening, after destroying this group, his next target would be Kang Jinhyuk. But immediately after, he froze for a moment. A thought flashed. If the target was Jinhyuk, then why did the opponent ask about his orders? The female warrior's previous words made him waver. The purple-haired girl glared, angrily questioning back, "Aren't you his ally?" That question stirred suspicion on both sides, igniting a deeper conflict. Realizing the serious misunderstanding, the female warrior roared in anger and immediately ordered all soldiers to retreat. The snowy wind swept their figures as they scattered chaotically from the battlefield. From within the icy tree shadows, a cold gaze observed the entire scene. The observer, a mysterious white-haired figure, muttered disdainfully about the useless demon clan, frustrated by their meaningless defeat. The white-haired survivor did not escape the consequences. A burning, painful mark on his chest made him frown. That pain flared whenever he thought of Kang Jinhyuk, like an unerasable curse. A voice sounded behind him, cold and knowing. The newcomer asked seriously, "Was that pain like being burned by fire?" His eyes tensed. Perhaps they were talking about the same person. As the fierce battle just ended, a figure suddenly appeared from the snowy forest, startling the one hiding to turn around. The tense atmosphere returned in an instant. The white-haired vampire immediately recognized the opponent, the rude human who had insulted him before. Anger surged, and he shouted, questioning the old enemy's appearance. The human sneered fearlessly, provoking the vampire with sarcastic words, boasting of victory and mocking how he had now become Kang Jinhyuk's lackey. Triggered by anger, the vampire drew his weapon, icy light gleaming on the blade as he prepared to punish the insolent human. But the opponent hurriedly begged for mercy. Suddenly, a red warning symbol lit up, the system preventing the vampire's action. The slave law forbids slaves from fighting each other, causing him to freeze. The mark on the vampire's body flared intensely, accompanied by excruciating pain that made him scream. The human also clutched his chest, grimacing in agony. Both were affected by the punishment effect. The scream echoed through the snowy mountains, soaring into the sky, signaling the beginning of a binding and dramatic relationship between former enemies. The system announced that Jinhyuk had received the Phoenix Feather, an AA-grade item that increases frost resistance by 500%, a rare material that can create special items when combined. Jinhyuk smiled with satisfaction, wearing his familiar apron, confident that conquering the 7th floor was now a small matter. But before that, he prioritized a more important task: eating. The feast was lively with cheerful conversations. Everyone was amazed by Jinhyuk's cooking skills, while he modestly replied, "It was just basic skills." While Jinhyuk was busy serving food to everyone, a warrior in black armor suddenly approached and politely expressed his thanks, causing him to pause for a moment, surprised and curious about this person's intentions. That person was Karakul, the chief of the Frost Blade tribe. With a sincere expression, he bowed his head to thank Jinhyuk for helping their tribe overcome danger, while also expressing his embarrassment at not knowing how to repay him. Immediately, the system announced that the condition had been met. Jinhyuk officially received recognition from Karakul, the chief of the Frost Blade tribe, an achievement not easily attained on this floor. Along with that, Jinhyuk successfully copied the skill White Predator, which increases attack speed and the ability to make weapons transparent, a highly useful skill if used at the right moment. Although thanked, Jinhyuk maintained his usual demeanor, smiling lightly and frankly replying that he did not help for free, a reminder that everything has its price. He did not hesitate to make a request. The tribe must pay him 500 mana crystals each month, preferably left at the entrance for his easy collection. His humorous yet practical attitude stunned the other party. Jinhyuk's boldness petrified Karakul on the spot. His expression of shock and despair was as if the bitter truth had just been exposed, that he had signed a sophisticated slave contract. Jinhyuk's companion, witnessing this audacious debt collection, shook his head, lamenting that he was truly a pure villain. He even regretted once thinking of changing his view of Jinhyuk. Despite the scolding, the other still ate heartily. When teased by Jinhyuk, he retorted that he was just eating in anger and out of frustration with what Jinhyuk had made him endure. Jin Hyuk did not miss this opportunity. With a sly smile, he proposed settling the anger with a bet, a fishing contest at sea. Whoever caught the biggest fish would win and have the right to publicly embarrass the other. A sharp slash tore through the ice surface, creating a loud splice sound as the match was about to begin. The lake's surface split in two, signaling the fishing contest entering an intense phase. Determined to compete, Yuzeong grabbed his collar, tore his clothes to reveal his muscular body. He was ready to dive into the merciless underwater battle. Without hesitation, Yuzeong plunged into the ice-cold water, biting his sword tightly in his mouth, swimming powerfully like a living arrow, heading straight to the deepest part of the lake. Yuzeong's eyes burned with repeated words in his mind, "I will win." The fierce motivation transformed him into an unyielding warrior amid the dark waters. Before Yuzeong was a terrifying sight, giant sea monsters with sharp teeth and glowing eyes. But he did not retreat. In his heart, he vowed to prove this victory to the whole world. On the lake's surface, two teammates watched bubbles rise anxiously and amused. One sighed, "Jin Hyuk is always like this?" The other could only helplessly reply, "Caught in the trap again." The whole group gathered, eating and commenting. One mocked Jin Hyuk as a devil, another was exasperated because Yuzeong kept falling into traps, while Jin Hyuk calmly prepared the next dish. Manhwa suddenly called Jin Hyuk and threw him a small item, something she found when he was unconscious. Jin Hyuk's reaction showed it was no ordinary object but a key leading to something more serious. Jin Hyuk held a pendant shaped like a cross with a glowing redstone. He realized this was the item Michael once intended to use to control Alice, causing his expression to become pensive again. Standing up with a serious expression, Jin Hyuk silently vowed to investigate the origin of this item further. He thanked Manhwa for finding it, a seemingly small detail that could turn the upcoming tide. As the members rested after the battle, someone in the group suddenly noticed Yoonseok's absence, wondering if he had returned to their team yet. Manhwa, with an indifferent look, replied that she had no idea where Yoonseok had gone, and in fact, it had been quite a while since she last saw him. Elsewhere, a system-wide announcement rang out. The 7th floor of the Tower of Trials had been conquered by the group Hardcore Gamer Corporation and Associates, shaking the entire system. An angry explosion echoed in the office as the director threw everything in rage. He could not believe that the highly anticipated plan ended so disastrously. In his fury, he yelled at his subordinates for letting Kang Jin Hyuk win, despite their significant investment of resources in this campaign, only to end with nothing. He roared, blaming betrayal of trust when he was promised that the 7th floor would be presented as a gift. Instead, it was a humiliating failure and a useless plan. He continued to rage upon discovering that the precious sword they invested in was also destroyed. Meanwhile, his subordinate merely smiled cryptically, fueling his anger further. Outside, news of the conquest of the 7th floor spread rapidly. A high-ranking member of the organization confirmed this seriously while looking up at the main building. Director Kim Tae-chun from the Awakening Association reaffirmed once again, the one who accomplished this spectacular feat was none other than Kang Jin Hyuk, a name always beyond their expectations. He continued analyzing the situation, stating that according to intelligence from Guild Dangun, there was a riot involving high-level forces and demons. Fortunately, Jin Hyuk and his team timely stopped their plot to escape the tower. In a luxurious skyscraper, senior figures stood before glass doors discussing whether to approach Kang Jin Hyuk. However, they chose to wait, judging that hasty action might reveal their intentions too soon. A powerful man expressed his doubts. Although Jin Hyuk was the hero of the recent battle, he remained an unpredictable individual. No one could be sure whether he would side with humanity or another force. Meanwhile, the outside world was filled with a celebratory atmosphere. People rejoiced that the 7th floor of the Tower of Trials had been surpassed, and faith in world order, though fragile, still persisted. A senior staff member shouted excitedly, calling everyone to gather. In a state of extreme excitement, news about the person who just achieved this historic feat was causing chaos throughout the management system. The chaos turned into urgent action. VVIP protocol, the highest level reception procedure, was activated. Staff quickly dispersed, alerting the entire system to prepare for Kang Jin Hyuk's arrival. Bodyguards in black suits and sunglasses immediately followed the practiced procedure. They hurriedly transported a large object, the red carpet, to the main hall at high speed. The red carpet was urgently rolled out along the reception corridor. Everything had to be perfect. Not a single detail could be overlooked because the arriving guest was a figure not to be underestimated. Reception staff simultaneously scattered rose petals along the red carpet, each gesture full of solemnity. They devoted themselves entirely to showing absolute respect to the distinguished guest. The sound of footsteps echoed on the flower-covered carpet, a symbol of a special person's presence. No introduction was needed, just those steps drew all eyes. A long line of staff bowed in unison. "It is an honor to welcome you." The atmosphere became unusually solemn, as if welcoming a head of state or the king of a new era. As the white-haired girl entered the shopping mall, the entire area immediately erupted in chaos. Staff collectively greeted her, respectfully calling her Madam VVIP, preparing to welcome a customer with absolute power and privilege. To prevent anyone from doubting her identity or financial capability, Alice casually dropped sparkling treasures of gold, silver, and precious jewelry. She declared full prepayment as a warning that no one was allowed to question her. Amid the staff's astonishment, Alice continued to demonstrate her authority. From this moment on, anything she touched or even glanced at belonged to her. No questions asked, no objections permitted. Sitting cross-legged on the throne like a queen, Alice smiled coldly. With a decisive tone, she ordered the start, marking the beginning of a lavish shopping spree filled with imposed power. The scene instantly became chaotic. While Alice was carried on a palanquin like a queen, a store employee fainted from excitement. The others were confused whether to call for help or offer congratulations. Alice turned around with a bright smile, showing undisguised excitement. That moment revealed a part of her, free, proud, and completely satisfied in her newly reborn power. Observing from afar, Kang Jinhyuk smiled gently. He did not intervene, only silently witnessing Alice's full revival, a sign that she had completely recovered after the serious ordeal. Reflecting on Jinhyuk's thoughts, the scene shifted to the relic Michael once used, the poet's necklace. This was a rare sacred item with strong sealing power, especially effective against dark creatures. Jinhyuk recalled the moment Michael used that necklace to bind Alice. He couldn't help but wonder, why did he choose to seal her instead of killing her? Could there be a deeper plan hidden? From the remaining clues, Jinhyuk began to doubt Michael's true objective. Choosing imprisonment over death with a holy grade item indicated that Alice still held some value or was a key part of a larger conspiracy. While Alice enjoyed shopping like a true VVIP, Kang Jinhyuk stood watching from afar, lost in thought. Unanswered questions about the necklace lingered in his mind. He decided to keep the relic, sensing it still concealed something unrevealed. Amid his thoughts, a ding sounded from the system notification, pulling Jinhyuk back to reality. An unexpected message appeared. Rick Hennessy had sent him an invitation to the masquerade ball on the first floor of the Tower of Trials. Jinhyuk's eyes gleamed with caution at this mysterious opportunity. Looking at the displayed mask more than just a prop for the ball, Jinhyuk softly repeated the event's name, Masquerade Ball? A mysterious feeling crept over him as this ball seemed to be more than just an ordinary costume party. Jinhyuk quietly observed Alice enjoying shopping, but in his heart he was still concerned about the poet's necklace, the item Michael once used to seal Alice. He resolved to keep it, sensing there was something he did not yet fully understand. A notification sound rang out, informing Jinhyuk that he had just received a message. The sender was none other than Rick Hennessy, accompanied by a special invitation. The invitation content displayed, Jinhyuk was allowed to participate in the Masquerade Ball, a mysterious event held on the first floor of the Tower of Trials, a place rarely opened under special conditions. He repeated the event name, Masquerade Ball, in his mind, his eyes glancing at the mask displayed behind the glass. It seemed like a hint about something important coming up. The information confirmed, the Masquerade Ball is a hidden event only unlocked on the 25th floor. Receiving an invitation while still on the first floor indicated this was no ordinary mission. Recalling when Tower of Trials was a little played online game, Jinhyuk had once been invited to the ball and had gone there alone, amidst a sea of flames he himself had created. At that time, he was the only attendee. No one witnessed it, but he enjoyed the party by dancing in his own way, burning down the entire hall as a chaotic declaration. But the situation was different now. Tower of Trials was no longer an obscure game, and Jinhyuk knew this time. The invitation was sent to many strong rankers worldwide. Jinhyuk turned to Alice and briefly informed her they had a place to go. A fleeting smile showed he had a specific plan for the upcoming journey. Alice turned her head, raising an eyebrow in confusion at Jinhyuk's sudden statement, but then both walked briskly through the crowd, preparing for a shopping trip that was more than just picking clothes. As Jinhyuk stepped into the tailor shop with Alice, he suddenly stopped, his gaze shifting as if sensing a familiar presence nearby. Inside, another player was being meticulously measured by goblin tailors. Upon seeing Jinhyuk, he turned around, exclaiming a short sentence full of meaning. As soon as he recognized Jinhyuk, the man's expression immediately changed, growing angry to the point of growling, with fury evident in his eyes. The anger erupted as he channeled his energy, lightning shooting out, questioning Jinhyuk about the time he was tricked in a bet, a still unhealed emotional wound. Jin Hyuk maintained a calm smile, even somewhat teasing. Meanwhile, Alice kept a cold expression, warning that fighting here would be pointless. Half-jokingly, Jin Hyuk asked the other to stop releasing mana if he didn't want the goblin tailors in the shop to faint one after another. Sure enough, the small goblin tailors couldn't withstand the strong mana flow and successively collapsed, causing the shop owner to sigh helplessly. Jin Hyuk glanced subtly at his old friend who was angry, flashing a sly smile as if calculating his next move in this tense conversation. He calmly spoke again, reminding him that cold baths are good for muscles, provoking him once more, causing the other to shout in anger, feeling betrayed. To ease the situation, Jin Hyuk quickly changed tactics, offering a promise of a special gift, a sword, hitting a weak spot, and making the other begin to waver. After recalling the fierce battle with the rock titan that damaged his sword, Kim Jae-tae admitted he needed a new weapon. Kang Jin Hyuk immediately offered to prepare a decent sword for him as a small gift before the ball. Though still wary and suspicious, Jae-tae clearly affirmed that this time he was serious. That attitude was like a warning to Jin Hyuk. This trust would not come easily. Under the sunset outside the window, Jae-tae turned away with a decisive statement that he would trust Jin Hyuk one last time. In response was Jin Hyuk's familiar cunning, calculating smile. It seemed he was about to pull someone else into his own plan. A skeptical glance was thrown by Jae-tae as he left. In that moment, he still couldn't completely shake off the unease of working with Jin Hyuk. Alice, witnessing everything, began to ponder about Jae-tae. She was curious as to why someone like him always stuck so closely to Jin Hyuk. What was their real relationship? However, Alice quickly brushed aside those doubts. To her, as long as that person wasn't an enemy, the relationship wasn't worth worrying about. After the earlier commotion, Jin Hyuk bowed his head to apologize to the goblin tailor. Fortunately, the tailor just laughed it off, saying such things were bound to happen in the shop. The tailor quickly returned to his usual professionalism, asking Jin Hyuk if he needed formal attire for two people attending a ball. At the same time, he suggested an all-black style from head to toe, elegant and mysterious. Although agreeing that black was an interesting choice, Jin Hyuk insisted he was looking for something else. As he walked through the shop, his eyes showed clear focus, as if he had sensed something familiar. Finally, he stopped in front of an incense burner emitting smoke. The scent of snowflake canola was immediately recognized by him. Jin Hyuk smiled, as if he had traced a forgotten memory. This scent surely meant more than just a shop decoration. Jin Hyuk gave a deep smile upon discovering the snowflake canola scent spreading in the room, a rare fragrance found only on the 16th floor, something impossible at a first-floor tailor shop unless someone extremely special was in disguise. At Jin Hyuk's subtly suspicious remark, the goblin tailor smiled innocently and dodged by denying it, but Jin Hyuk pressed on, emphasizing that he had noticed something unusual during the recent incident. Jin Hyuk recalled the scene when mana erupted. All the goblins in the shop fainted, except for one who remained standing, the head goblin, making Jin Hyuk's suspicion even clearer. A detailed memory flashed in Jin Hyuk's mind. In the moment when mana filled the air, the goblin's eyebrows twitched slightly as if reacting instinctively rather than being affected. Alice, standing next to Jin Hyuk, quickly pointed out that the unusual moment was when the goblin's gaze accidentally met hers, a clear sign that he had recognized her identity at first sight. With a half-smile, Jin Hyuk continued, affirming that the goblin had shown recognition of Alice just from that initial glance, something impossible for an ordinary low-level tailor. Jin Hyuk put all the evidence together and publicly stated his final deduction. This goblin, though pretending to be innocent, was actually a mid-level manager of the tower, someone like Rick Hennessy. After finishing his words, Jin Hyuk smiled confidently and posed a final question, challenging the other to refute. Where did I get it wrong? In response, the goblin neither denied nor confirmed. He just curled his lips into a meaningful smile, as if he'd been found out but wasn't at all flustered. Finally, he broke the silence with a sentence that changed the atmosphere. But there's one thing you guessed wrong, opening the way for an important revelation to come. The goblin tailor revealed his true identity with a cold smile. He was not a mid-level manager like Rick Hennessy, but rather Rick was actually his subordinate. The declaration completely changed the situation. Faced with this unexpected information, Jin Hyuk was stunned, his expression serious and full of doubt. A character who seemed harmless turned out to outrank even those in power he had known before. Without letting emotions take over, Jin Hyuk immediately activated the skill Greedy Eye to examine the true rank and power of his opponent, his red gaze shining with absolute caution. However, the skill failed. The level gap between him and the opponent was too great. Before him now was no ordinary goblin, but Hastings, senior manager of the Tower of Trials. Jin Hyuk was stunned to realize the truth. Hastings was one of the 7 senior managers, those who had the authority to create laws and control all the rules within the tower. Cold sweat dripped down, and Jinhyuk forced a smile. Inside, he couldn't help but be shaken upon realizing he had just encountered one of the most powerful figures he had never met before. Hastings admitted Rick was the one who informed him about someone who had discovered the existence of the management. Now, the direct meeting made him feel even more intrigued. As a worthy reward for uncovering the secret about the management, Hastings decided to personally tailor a perfect suit for Jinhyuk as a special gift. Nevertheless, Jinhyuk was not easily satisfied. To him, a reward from such a senior manager being just a suit was too modest, clearly showing disappointment in his eyes and a sarcastic tone. As usual, Jinhyuk pointed at Alice without clarifying his intention, causing her to react irritably. Even in the middle of an important conversation, their interaction retained its characteristic humor. In Alice's hand was a card shimmering with strange light, a decorated invitation bearing mysterious symbols and ancient characters. The gift that Jinhyuk had exchanged with intelligence and risk had finally reached her. Sitting by the fountain, Alice was surprised by Jinhyuk's recklessness. He calmly replied that if there was a senior manager in front of them, why not take the opportunity to ask for more rewards? Jinhyuk cleverly distracted by teasing the party-loving girl, while his pet quickly snatched the strange object from its owner's hand with adorable enthusiasm. Worry was evident in Alice's eyes. She warned that Hastings was no ordinary figure. He was one of those who set the laws for the tower, and all of them possessed terrifying power. While Alice was still troubled, Jinhyuk gently patted Yam's head, as if to reassure both the pet and himself. He affirmed that he fully understood the danger level of managers like Hastings. A sinister smile appeared on Jinhyuk's face, his eyes flashing with calculation. He knew well that the more dangerous it was, the greater the reward, provided he played his cards right. A system notification suddenly sounded. Both formal outfits had been completed, one for him and one for Alice. The final message from Hastings wished them a pleasant evening, as if everything was part of a prearranged script. The outdoor hall was brightly lit with torches, crowds bustling inside. Those chosen by the tower, the top rankers, all gathered, creating an atmosphere both solemn and brimming with anticipation. A footstep echoed amid the noisy scene, drawing the crowd's gaze toward the gate. Someone important was arriving, and that presence immediately attracted all eyes. From afar, two people dressed formally entered. Looking at their emblem and style, the crowd quickly recognized them as members of the Samurai Guild. An invisible pressure radiated, causing the space to briefly tense. Hashikawa Yoshio, the guild master of the Samurai Guild, appeared with a dignified and cold demeanor in a suit and traditional demon mask. In that solemn moment, he wondered if those gathered here were truly worthy heroes of humanity. Hashikawa's sharp eyes swept across the crowd. He called Tsutomu, standing beside him, pointing toward the attendees, seemingly initiating a harsh judgment against those he considered inferior. With a contemptuous voice, Hashikawa described the attendees as parasites clinging to the strong. His anger surged as he saw the crowd's naive admiration, and he did not hesitate to express his desire to wipe out all the trash before him. Tsutomu, the large associate, intervened with a reassuring tone. He believed Hashikawa was only angry because of the guild's treasure theft, but that comfort made Hashikawa retort, "Tsutomu should be more understanding, not sarcastic." Suddenly recalling important information, Tsutomu whispered into Hashikawa's ear. The China Guild had also received an invitation and had proactively contacted them. This was not just a party, but a political chessboard. Tsutomu continued, saying the China Guild suggested the allies should stand together in this event because no one knew what might happen. However, his words were cut off by a slight collision from behind. Alice had accidentally bumped into him. Immediately, Tsutomu reacted fiercely. With a threatening growl, he demanded the stranger in front of him to get out of the way, showing an uncompromising attitude despite it being just a minor collision. But before he finished speaking, a flash of light cut through the space. In an instant, Tsutomu's eyes widened in shock as he was suddenly attacked, clearly a highly precise and lightning-fast counterattack. Tsutomu's massive body was slammed to the ground with a heavy smash sound. The blow was so strong it cracked the stone floor, and his previously fierce momentum completely vanished in a single strike. Witnessing his loyal subordinate defeated in an instant, Hashikawa panicked and loudly called his name. The expression beneath his mask was no longer arrogant but filled with astonishment and fear. The attacker was definitely no ordinary person. Insulted by the rude threat of the large man, Alice raised her head high, her eyes flashing with deadly intent. Each strand of her white hair gently moved as she spoke, her tone sharp as a blade, challenging the arrogance just shown. At the same time, Jinhyuk stepped forward from behind, standing beside Alice like a majestic wall. In the tense atmosphere, his voice rang out softly but sharply like a sword, "How about now?" And the pressure from them made the ground beneath their opponents seem ready to collapse. Exuding overwhelming killing intent, Alice stared at the humiliated man, her eyes blazing like hellfire. In her noble black dress, she disdainfully asked again, emphasizing the disparity, "Am I still in your way?" Words light but enough to make the entire hall hold its breath. Tsutomu, the strongest warrior of the samurai guild, was crushed to the ground, his face distorted by the overwhelming pressure he could not withstand. In panic, he could not understand why he had become so powerless. Alice stood proudly, her eyes blazing red as if burning the air, her aura radiating like fire. Her special skill was confirmed by the system, crushing weaker opponents with absolute magic power. Witnessing Tsutomu being overwhelmed to the point of helplessness, Hoshikawa Yoshio, the samurai guild master, panicked, unable to believe that the strongest under his command was defeated by a girl. The presence of Alice and Jinhyuk became overwhelmingly dominant, leaving the crowd stunned and speechless. Yoshio was filled with extreme confusion. What was the true identity of these two? Jinhyuk timely placed his hand on Alice's shoulder, gently asking her to stop. He warned that if she continued, their true identities might be exposed, which would cause unnecessary trouble. Annoyed, Alice withdrew her overwhelming aura, officially deactivating the skill, Absolute Authority. Although she stopped, she still clearly showed her displeasure at the troublesome situation that had just occurred. Jinhyuk stepped forward, speaking coldly with his usual dominant attitude. He acknowledged that his action to stop Alice was necessary, but that was enough, no need to continue warning. Under pressure and cornered, Hoshikawa tried to save face. He forced a smile, justifying that despite minor conflicts, they were all rankers, and tactfully apologized on behalf of Tsutomu. Jinhyuk narrowed his eyes in thought. A cold question appeared in his mind. Did I stop her? Clearly, the truth was not as calm as it seemed at first glance. Without warning, Jinhyuk summoned an ice weapon. The skill, Ice Statue, was activated. A fierce cold burst forth, preparing to initiate a new calculated action. Without hesitation, the masked man slammed the ice hammer down on the fallen enemy, creating a terrifying impact that shattered the ground. The power displayed came not only from the weapon but also from the absolute intimidation of the one holding the initiative. The man wearing the red mask cried out in pain as his mask cracked under brutal pressure. His eyes rolled back, his expression revealing unmistakable fear and humiliation. One of the onlookers, also masked, was startled in horror as the next merciless blow landed. Surprise surged across the face of someone who had thought they were watching a joke. The white-haired girl observed with a calm, sarcastic expression. Each wham sound seemed only to amuse her more, as if watching a performance made just for her. The man bent down, looking at the crushed figure lying in the pit with a mix of surprise and mockery. He gently explained that what he requested was for the girl to retreat because he wanted to personally finish off the weakling. Looking directly at Hoshikawa, leader of the samurai guild, he asked with a sinister smile, "Do you understand now?" The words were both a provocation and a declaration of power in front of the crowd. Still maintaining a calm face but with blazing red eyes, he activated the skill, Eye of Gluttony. In that moment, the identity and stats of his opponent began to appear clearly before him. Hoshikawa was stunned when he saw himself completely exposed. Name, level, skills, and even the number of coins revealed in an instant. A feeling of embarrassment and shame crept into the heart of the leader of one of the world's top 7 guilds. The masked man tilted his head, pondering. He wondered, was this all the strength a famous guild master could achieve? But at the same time, he was annoyed by the increasingly complex skill copying conditions imposed by the system. Hoshikawa gritted his teeth in anger, unable to believe that the opponent dared to strike him, a prestigious figure, even after knowing his identity. That question was both a psychological blow and the final threat before his pride completely shattered. Hoshikawa Yoshio shouted angrily, invoking the reputation of the Samurai Guild and its alliance with the China Guild to threaten. His face was furious, trying to intimidate his opponent with organizational power. Facing the threat, the masked man calmly placed his hand on his mask, softly uttering as if contemplating whether to respond or not. Without any fear, he slowly replied with a cold challenge that the only thing Hoshikawa should worry about is whether he can withstand him. Hoshikawa paled, unable to hide his horror. When the mask was removed, the entire audience was stunned. The one who had overwhelmed Hoshikawa was none other than Kang Jinhyuk, famous for his recklessness and terrifying strength. The crowd immediately erupted, everyone recognizing Jinhyuk. Whispers spread, the person standing before Hoshikawa was him, and the mysterious girl beside him also sparked much curiosity. Annoyed by the commotion, Jinhyuk gestured with his finger. A snow symbol appeared. He had just activated the skill, Glacial Sculpture, to silence the meaningless whispers. A giant ice wall suddenly rose, causing Hoshikawa to startle and step back. Jinhyuk reassured him that the ice was only to block noise, but everyone clearly saw it as a warning. Jin Hyuk began to step forward, the sound of his boots pounding on the cold ice. He reminded Hashikawa that he must have heard of his reputation and those childish threats carried no weight with him. Without stopping, Jin Hyuk coldly declared that he didn't care about the China Guild or their allies, the words accompanied by the ice beneath his feet shattering. Sharp ice spikes silently shot out, nearly touching Hashikawa's neck. Though he did not strike, Jin Hyuk had absolutely asserted dominance both in power and psychology. After finishing the violent display of power, the silver-haired girl coldly stepped over the defeated body, maintaining her noble demeanor. She gently signaled that it was time to leave, as if the recent chaos had never existed. While Jin Hyuk calmly adjusted his mask, Sylvia leisurely hummed a strange tune. In the distance, another figure approached with a heavy expression, someone who must have witnessed the entire scene. The man with an angry expression gritted his teeth and called out Jin Hyuk's name directly. His sharp gaze betrayed rising hostility, signaling an unresolved confrontation. Immediately after, the system announced they had entered a special event area, a masquerade ball. Sylvia looked up at the magnificent surroundings, surprised by the large scale of the place despite being only on the first floor. Jin Hyuk sensed something unusual, a ball that was too crowded. While he silently assessed the situation, Sylvia quickly scanned the hall with a wary expression. Instantly, Jin Hyuk spotted two acquaintances. Teresa, as expected, was at the event, chatting happily with Maria, a figure he had encountered at a summit. And soon, his gaze stopped on a suspicious shadow, a man in a familiar red suit. It was the one who had stalked him near the tailor shop before. Amid the bustling crowd, Jin Hyuk suddenly paused when he caught sight of two unfamiliar figures. The vague but familiar feeling made him tilt his head in confusion, as if his memory hadn't yet matched names to faces. In another corner, two figures were mocking a girl standing with her back turned. One of them pointed with a sarcastic look, implicitly expressing contempt, while their words were full of malice and challenge. Amid the lively festival atmosphere, two independent S-rankers, Casey and Judro, appeared. With energetic demeanors, they seemed unconcerned by the underlying tension, seeing this place merely as an exciting playground. When Jin Hyuk happened to see the twin brothers Casey and Judro in the ballroom, memories of their notorious reputation immediately surfaced in his mind. According to rumors spreading on YouTube, they were the top names on the players to avoid list in Europe. That terrible reputation was not without reason. Casey and Judro were true maniacs, unafraid to spread violence. On every floor of the tower, they actively provoked, mercilessly slaughtering, leaving terror wherever they set foot. However, while others saw them as disasters, Jin Hyuk smiled with satisfaction. To him, these two were living treasures, full of exploitable potential, a perfect opportunity to upgrade his skills. That thought made Jin Hyuk's eyes shine brightly in the darkness. His excitement was unmistakable. He did not see the two maniacs as threats, but as vivid materials to test new skills. He had already begun looking forward to an interesting confrontation. Alice, who stood closely beside Jin Hyuk, easily guessed what he was scheming. Seeing his delighted expression and sly, silent smile, she could only sigh inwardly. Trouble was about to strike again. In another corner of the banquet hall, two unfamiliar figures discussed with disbelief. One appeared confused, unable to understand why Jin Hyuk acted so arrogantly despite knowing they were allies. Doubt began to spread among those who seemed to be comrades. The masked man, previously humiliated by Jin Hyuk, nodded in admission that he had to attend the party alone because his teammates were missing. In the stifling atmosphere, he feared that not participating in the event might cause system punishment. Meanwhile, Liao Wei, the vice president of the China Guild, felt choked up recalling the times he had been insulted by Jin Hyuk before in the fairy forest and snowy region. Now, facing him again, he couldn't help but feel fate was truly ironic. Liao Wei's hatred grew stronger as he remembered the order from Moyang Su, his leader, not to provoke Jin Hyuk anymore. Trapped in endurance, he bitterly admitted that even retaliation was forbidden. However, not everyone accepted such endurance. Another member of the China Guild suddenly stood up in anger, declaring he would teach a lesson to Jin Hyuk immediately. Angry footsteps echoed, marking the start of an unavoidable confrontation. Kaman, a low-level manager of the dance area, appeared confidently, adjusting his tie himself while declaring he would step forward, attracting the attention of curious onlookers around. As Kaman approached, three other attendees looked at the small boy with amusement. One even held a wine glass, pointing as if discovering a strange creature at the party. The focal point was the glowing horn on Kaman's forehead. One person skeptically asked if he was a monster, while another cooed over his adorable appearance. At that moment, Kang Jinhyuk appeared before Kaman and his companion, asking politely but with hidden meaning about his experience at the ball. Kaman did not feel intimidated, introducing himself as the manager of this area of the Tower of Trials with an official and confident demeanor despite his modest height. Jinhyuk continued tapping on his hologram keyboard while provocatively inquiring, implying he was waiting to see what trouble Kaman intended to cause. Kaman immediately mentioned that one of his guests had been turned into mesh, questioning Jinhyuk whether that rumor was true in a half-joking tone. Jinhyuk calmly replied that it was just a light collision from his companion, even sarcastically saying he would send a bouquet, and quietly asked if cacti would be suitable. That mocking joke made Kaman's smile turn dangerous. A mysterious dark aura began to spread from behind him, marking a serious change in the atmosphere. Unable to contain himself, Kaman flew into a rage, shouting at Jinhyuk whether he was joking with him, while unleashing dark tentacle-shaped energy that enveloped the entire banquet hall, threatening the true power of a tower manager. Whispers spread throughout the hall as the crowd witnessed the tense scene between manager Kaman and Kang Jinhyuk. No one expected a manager to directly threaten a player during such a grand party. Kang Jinhyuk removed his mask, smiling challengingly. He mocked Kaman's abuse of power, saying threatening guests was no different than ruining the party's atmosphere. At the same time, he warned that if Kaman dared to act, the consequences would be unpleasant. Kaman's smile twisted into a threatening grimace. With the power of a low-level manager, he scoffed at Jinhyuk's arrogance and declared he could easily eliminate a first-floor player like him. As the threat ended, a mysterious group watched the situation from the second floor, the gathering place of the strongest forces in the Tower of Trials. Though no one on the ground floor saw them, those watchful eyes silently evaluated every action below. Sensing the surveillance, Kaman remained unafraid. He resolved that even if blood was spilled in the banquet hall today, no one would have the courage to stop him. A riot was about to erupt. Teresa, standing behind Jinhyuk, clenched her teeth and prepared to strike. Red magical energy swirled around her hands, showing her readiness to intervene if the situation got out of control. However, just as Teresa was about to act, Jinhyuk raised his hand to signal her to stop. He had his own plan and did not yet need his teammates' intervention. Suddenly, a powerful shout echoed from afar, "Kaman!" The voice boomed like a direct blow to the peak arrogance of the low-level manager. Kaman immediately turned his head, his face pale with shock. Though still immersed in his darkness and power, he could not ignore that shout. The newcomer was definitely no ordinary person. At that moment, an internal system notification popped up in Kaman's mind. One of my buttons is about to come undone. Seemingly trivial, but for him, this was an unusual sign and an omen of impending disaster. A sudden system reminder announced that a button on the formal suit was coming undone. This small detail became the starting point for an unexpected situation in the dramatic party. The seasoned tailor, Hastings, was stunned by the wardrobe malfunction notification. With absolute confidence in his craftsmanship, he could not believe that the suit he made himself had a problem. Kaman was utterly terrified upon seeing Hastings' arrival. Panic showed clearly on his face as he realized he had crossed a line he should not have. Hastings entered the grand hall with an angry demeanor. Each step he took was a declaration of authority, and the system immediately confirmed a senior manager had appeared. After pushing up his signature round glasses, Hastings gritted his teeth and called Kaman's name. The fury in his voice seemed to drown the entire room in suffocating pressure. A roar thundered forth along with the aura radiating from his stern suit. In his rage, Hastings questioned Kaman about insulting his client, an unforgivable act to this proud tailor. As the party atmosphere was boiling with provocation, a sudden kick aimed straight at Kaman's leg made him cry out in pain. The kick was not merely to punish physically but also to warn the arrogant one who threatened the guests. He knelt down, clutching his aching leg, his face showing clear resentment and surprise. However, the man opposite remained cold, with no intention to forgive, questioning again in an authoritative tone, "I asked you a question, remember?" Suddenly, Hastings' authoritative voice rang out, cutting the tension with a pressing question. "What are you doing to my client?" Kaman was stunned, sweat pouring down like rain, stammering without words. The crowd began to stir. While all eyes turned there, someone exclaimed in astonishment, "That little goblin is a senior manager?" No one had ever thought such a small figure could hide such great power. Hastings' gaze became serious. He spoke in a low voice, admitting he knew some managers accepted bribes to manipulate power. Although he had previously turned a blind eye, clearly, Kaman's action this time had crossed the line. He continued, emphasizing the political consequences if a manager acted against a guest invited by someone else. Those words made Kaman hurriedly bow and apologize, his face pale, realizing he had stepped into a serious forbidden zone. But that apology was not enough. Hastings' cold gaze pierced straight through Come-On, declaring, "This is unacceptable." The anger of a man always seen as neutral now revealed no mercy. Just as the atmosphere grew suffocating, Kang Jin-hyuk stepped forward with a cold smile, clearly stating, "I'm not the one you should apologize to, right?" Those words froze the entire hall, pushing Come-On into a completely passive position. Come-On stood speechless, his face dazed as if doused with cold water. He could not have anticipated the situation turning to the point where he was forced to bow before someone he once looked down upon. Before Come-On could react, a glowing orb floated beside Jin-hyuk. He smiled slightly, emphasizing, "Oh, this is a rare scene worth recording." The recording system started, marking the truth to be preserved forever. Under the pressure of the camera and the eyes of the entire hall, Jin-hyuk coldly raised his hand, signaling the start of the apology. Come-On trembled before the overwhelming authority, being called out as a low-level manager unable to lift his head. Come-On bowed his head, stammering an apology in reluctant whispers. But those weak words only deepened the humiliation under the eyes of the one controlling the game. Unsatisfied with the half-hearted remorse, Jin-hyuk shouted loudly, forcing Come-On to repeat his apology sincerely. The atmosphere froze, making everyone too afraid to speak. Pushed to his limit, Come-On gritted his teeth in anger, fury boiling inside. He jumped up intending to counterattack, but insulting the opponent while being recorded was unwise. However, before he could react, the fiery red murderous gaze of Mr. Hastings, the senior supervisor, stopped all reckless moves. Come-On immediately turned pale, realizing he was standing on the edge of an abyss. Trembling with fear, Come-On hurriedly bowed deeply to apologize again. The apology echoed throughout the hall, not only as a plea for forgiveness, but also as proof of his complete defeat before Jin-hyuk. From the upper floor, a large figure was observing everything. He was amazed that one person could make a manager bow and silently admitted, Jin-hyuk truly was an extraordinary person as rumored. Recalling the gift that the master once gave Jin-hyuk, this figure finally understood the reason behind that favor. Now, he only hoped to be able to recruit this person to his side. His gaze shifted to a long-haired figure standing nearby, someone who seemed to be considering another plan. The atmosphere between them was tense, clearly showing the scheming behind every word. The white-haired man, with a solemn expression, sighed. Silently, he thought that if Jin-hyuk truly sided with them, then perhaps the brutal war against those foolish Murim might have a chance to end. A deep sound echoed as the system announced that the loudspeaker had been activated. The man standing on the high podium adjusted his collar and cleared his throat, preparing to announce something important to the entire silent hall. While Come-On, the low-level manager, was enduring humiliation below, the steward standing on the balcony declared he would take charge of opening the ball, simultaneously beginning to reveal the true reason why the powerful figures were invited tonight. The host revealed that the most elite players climbing the tower were all present at this party. However, the surprising thing was that this ball was not merely a gathering, it had a deeper purpose. With a calm smile, the man disclosed the real goal of the party. Each person would have to choose a faction within the tower's system of forces to serve in the next conquest journey. Immediately after the shocking announcement, the main event of the ball officially began. A dazzling pillar of light appeared in the room, making the atmosphere tense and solemn. All players were required to prove their worth. The rules were quickly established. Each person must select an area from floors 10 to 30 of the challenge tower, whether dungeon, maze, or ruins, and overcome it to receive evaluation and be prioritized in faction selection. The coordinator finally wished everyone luck, then with an assistant closed the large door. A heavy creak sound echoed as the gate slowly shut, ending the ceremony and beginning the perilous competition. Slam! The large door slammed shut like an irreversible signal. Now, every participant had to fight for position and glory within the tower. The unexpected scene stunned the crowd. Even the most prominent players could not hide their surprise, realizing this masquerade ball was more than just a typical political game. Whispers spread throughout the hall. The phrase "forces of the tower" confused many players, reminding them of the vague words earlier from the low-level manager. The puzzle about true power within the tower seemed about to be revealed. Amid the tense atmosphere, a red-haired girl suddenly raised her hand and whistled sharply. The piercing sound seemed to grab attention, cutting through the tangled chatter among the contestants. A male player quickly spoke up, emphasizing that everyone here was an experienced tower climber. There was no room for unprofessional behavior or panic. Not letting confusion linger, the red-haired woman spoke, proposing cooperation to complete an unexpected mission. She removed her mask, showing determination to face and trust each other among the contestants. The narrator observed her with admiration, Maria of Olympus, a true ranker. Despite surprise at the situation, she was the first to act decisively without hesitation. Teresa smiled brightly as she turned to Jin Hyuk, confirming a familiar fact: they would continue to accompany each other, a relationship increasingly bonded through each tower climbing challenge. However, not everyone agreed. One player openly opposed, doubting the mission's goal this time and questioning obedience to the tower's inhabitants, those once considered enemies. Seeing the atmosphere begin to tense, another player tried to ease the situation, but at that moment, a shifting pillar of light appeared, signaling a decision had just been made. While the group was still arguing, Maria, still resolute, stepped forward to the selection device, said nothing, and decisively pressed the red button. This action left everyone astonished. An urgent warning sound rang out, signaling that the selection process was complete. Maria still looked coldly ahead, while the others were stunned, unable to react in time. The result clearly displayed the player had chosen floor 25, Valley of the Late King. While Maria calmly sipped her wine, all eyes turned to the man who confirmed the location, Kang Jinhyuk. Maria was completely stunned upon realizing control of the situation had been snatched away. She did not expect that someone she considered inferior would dare to act before her, leaving not only her but also those around her speechless with confusion. Jin Hyuk, with a cold smile, placed his hand on his face in a gesture characteristic of a demon, causing Teresa beside him to utter only two words: "He really is a demon." The magical energy glowing from his outfit made her recognize the familiar scenario she had witnessed before. All players were enveloped by the teleportation light. Jin Hyuk smiled as if he had anticipated the panic behind him. While everyone was still bewildered, he casually gave a thumbs up as if wishing everyone safe travels. The group was teleported to floor 25, Valley of the Late King. Amid the mysterious atmosphere, the game rules were announced: either overcome the maze or be chosen by a force. These were the only two ways to leave this place. Jin Hyuk looked up at the magnificent architecture of floor 25 with a calm gaze, as if this place were his home. Meanwhile, Alice frowned regretfully as the glass of wine she had been holding earlier was lost during the teleportation. Tension began to rise among the players. Some, still shaken from the shock, expressed dissatisfaction at being dragged into a challenge without preparation, as if they had been thrown into a battlefield without warning. Contrary to the fear of the majority, a few saw this as an opportunity to prove themselves. One player shouted determinedly, declaring he would turn this situation into a competition to earn points and be chosen, despite the dangerous atmosphere. Maria maintained her stance, trying to reassure the group. She emphasized that division would only make things worse and reminded everyone that they still knew nothing about this place, so they must be cautious and united. However, as she was about to propose a strategy, she noticed someone had disappeared. She turned to seek cooperation but saw only Alice standing coldly with crossed arms and a remaining light figure gradually fading. Jin Hyuk had acted first. Alice merely shrugged when others wondered where Jin Hyuk had gone. Her indifferent attitude implicitly suggested Jin Hyuk never needed permission or consensus from anyone. He had chosen his own path from the very first moment. Alone in the ancient hall, Jin Hyuk approached the closed gate with calm confidence. Without hesitation, he whispered, "Let's see," as if he already knew what this place concealed. He moved close to the stone wall, his hand gliding lightly over every crack, searching for a hidden mechanism. "It's just around here." His voice clearly showed familiarity with this terrain. When his hand touched the right spot, a clack sound rang out and a notification appeared. 5 paths leading to the late king's tomb had been revealed, but players could only choose one door. Before Jin Hyuk, 5 gates engraved with elemental symbols appeared. A stern message reminded, "Make your choice within 60 seconds." Jin Hyuk laughed at the cold announcement, his eyes showing no fear. Truly a ruthless message, he thought, then sarcastically added, "At least there should be some jewels." A quick deduction formed in his mind. If he chose a door with an elemental symbol, the path would open but traps would activate, summoning guardian spirits. He continued hypothesizing, what if he chose nothing and let time run out? Immediately, a notification appeared, "Time's up. All doors open." The doors all opened simultaneously, emitting growling sounds and powerful beams of light. The deliberate tactic of not choosing any door activated all the traps at once, exactly as Jin Hyuk's daring plan intended. The first step out of the gate belonged to a small creature. With a sigh of frustration, it grumbled, "Why is it always me who goes first?" Emerging in flickering light, the small creature with a glowing tail stepped out lazily, a fire elemental spirit named Salamander. It muttered upon seeing Jin Hyuk, "What's this? A human?" Salamander, the blazing embodiment of the guardian spirit, flared into a gigantic form, declaring its role as the tomb's protector and condemning Kang Jin Hyuk for trespassing with a sentence of destruction. Before the threatening declaration, Jin Hyuk merely smirked, his cold eyes glancing at the fierce opponent as if survival had never been something to unsettle him. A small foot with sharp claws landed on the ground. Yam, Jinhyok's familiar creature, took position, ready for a surprising counterattack. Yam burst with vigor, charging like a living cannonball, its eyes filled with fighting spirit. The innocent tweet sound contrasted sharply with its determined and fierce appearance. Facing the giant salamander preparing to attack, Jinhyok calmly stood in front of Yam, ready to observe the clash. Salamander's gaze wavered upon noticing this strange presence. Without hesitation, Yam sprinted forward at full speed, eyes blazing with fire and body coiled in a leap carrying all its latent power, determined to ambush the enemy. Jinhyok calmly placed 2 fingers on his temple, activating his familiar skill, Fear. His face retained a faint, confident smile. The fear effect immediately took hold. Yam, empowered by killing intent, screeched fiercely as it charged straight into the fire beast. Salamander's flames seemed unable to stop this sudden strike. The entire scene exploded in a sea of fire. Salamander screamed helplessly as it was overwhelmed by Yam's sudden fury. The situation reversed in an instant. Salamander's face distorted in extreme terror. With the surprise attack and overwhelming killing intent, Yam caused the Tomb Guardian to panic, unable to react in time. A sudden swirling gust of wind blew out from the secret passage, shaking the ancient stone corridor. The light from the wide-open gate seemed to signal that something unusual was about to happen, attracting the attention of the group waiting outside. Before the sudden shock, the guards panicked and stepped back. A massive surge of energy poured out from inside, causing the ground to tremble and the surrounding air to tear apart under its pressure. In the chaos, a group of people approached Alice, led by a knight in shining armor. He called her name cautiously yet urgently, as if trying to inquire about something important. Teresa, standing beside Alice, immediately asked directly whether Jinhyok had left any message or clue before suddenly disappearing. In response, Alice remained silent, her expression unreadable. Another man turned his back, a strange light enveloping his body. He coldly concluded that Jinhyok must be at the origin of the recent gust because doing things unexpectedly was his usual style. As the man was about to walk away, Alice suddenly grabbed the hem of his coat, making him stop and turn around in surprise. Her eyes were no longer indifferent at that moment. A close-up of Alice's expression revealed deep contemplation and determination. It seemed she had made her own choice, an unspoken action that clearly showed her stance. She said nothing, only gently waved her hand. A small black stone fell onto the stone floor, producing a cold sound. She had made her decision to intervene in the situation. Meanwhile, on the other side of the battlefield, a loud explosion rang out. A giant fiery gate-shaped trap was triggered, shooting fierce sparks before the horrified eyes of the stranger who had just entered. Teresa, after realizing the whole situation, turned to Alice with a look of surprise and admiration. When Alice nodded, admitting she had anticipated the trap, Teresa could only laugh. Indeed, Jinhyok's close friend was just as formidable. Teresa smiled gently, hiding the rising suspicion within her heart behind her usual calm demeanor. However, that peace was only temporary. Despite trying to maintain friendliness, Teresa could not shake off the chill she felt when looking at Alice. She felt as if she had met this person before, a mysterious intuition that made her heart tighten. Elsewhere, in the dark ruins, a stone hand slowly moved. Someone was waking up, accompanied by painful groans and a silent question. What just happened? Gnome and Sylphid staggered to their feet after the chaos. The earth and wind spirits experienced dizziness for the first time and quickly realized Salamander was no longer in his original position. At the same time, Undine and Wisp, the water and light spirits, appeared, confirming the initial promise that not all needed to fight. However, their expressions showed that something had gone beyond expectations. Undine looked around, confused as she sensed something unusual. Her wide eyes reflected growing fear as the truth was about to be revealed. As soon as Undine detected the anomaly, she immediately rushed down, frantically calling Salamander's name. The sight of the fire spirit lying motionless instantly made the atmosphere tense. Salamander was trembling, sweat pouring down like rain. Struggling to stay still, the fire creature whispered a signal for everyone to be silent. In a shaky voice, it warned, "There is a demon here." The group of spirits froze simultaneously. From their eyes to their gestures, all showed extreme alertness. The question instinctively arose, a demon? In the cold and dark space, the light from Salamander's tail flickered. Before them, a terrifying figure slowly emerged from the black mist, a being radiating distinctly evil aura. A chilling wide smile appeared on Gaguma's face, its eyes glowing as if emanating from a nightmare, while its casual tweet sound made the atmosphere even more bizarre. Startled by the scene before him, the old man with a white beard slammed his hand on the table, his horrified gaze reflecting the rapidly spreading panic among the organization's members in the shadows. Looking at the image appearing in the observation orb, he could not hide his astonishment. Isn't that an ancient creature? A question choked by unspeakable terror. At that moment, Jinhyuk activated the skill Mark of Obedience. His fingertip touched the water spirit, leaving a blue light and beginning the process of establishing ownership. The system quickly confirmed a major achievement. All 5 spirits had submitted to Kang Jinhyuk. He was immediately rewarded 5,000 merit points and overwhelmingly took the top spot on the leaderboard. Reactions spread rapidly throughout the system. Various powers continuously sent contact signals. All simultaneously focused their attention on Jinhyuk, the one who had just acquired an ancient creature and dominated the 5 elements. Jinhyuk looked up at the flood of invitations pouring in from the system, softly uttering, "Oh my!" Yet his eyes shone with clarity and pride at the special attention. He smiled slyly as he read the invitation from the third force, a mysterious yet influential name. Inside, he knew he had a chance to stir up the situation once again. Gently stroking Gaguma affectionately, Jinhyuk whispered, "It's all thanks to you, Gaguma." The spirit beast softly tweeted and rubbed its head against its master's palm, as if accepting its key role. After consideration, Jinhyuk did not hesitate to choose yes to the invitation from Murim, a traditional martial arts power. He was ready to step into a new political negotiation full of schemes and opportunities. On the screen appeared a powerful figure. He introduced himself as Moyong-Soo, representative of the Murim martial arts force, sending his first greeting to Kang Jinhyuk in an official call. Without beating around the bush, Moyong-Soo immediately set a condition: join Murim if you want to live. His cold words and sharp gaze showed this was not an invitation but a covertly lethal order. Faced with this disguised threat, Jinhyuk merely tilted his head slightly and pressed the button to end the call without hesitation. To him, baseless arrogance was just trash. Returning to his busy schedule, Jinhyuk quickly roused the spirit beasts, preparing for the next contact, the negotiation with a more powerful force, the Empire. While ordering training, Jinhyuk issued a humorous yet serious warning: if they weren't serious, the spirit beasts would become a light snack for Gaguma. Pressure immediately fell upon the little ones. Wasting no time, Jinhyuk pressed accept on the contact request from the Empire, ready to receive an offer from a faction much larger and wiser than Murim. Appearing on the screen was Fenheimer, representative of the Caladium Kingdom under the Empire, greeting with noble and solemn demeanor. Jinhyuk politely introduced himself and affirmed a positive relationship with the Empire, showing goodwill for cooperation from the start. Fenheimer got straight to the point. He proposed Jinhyuk join the Empire, promising strong support during his tower ascent. Smiling calculatingly, Jinhyuk neither refused nor agreed immediately, politely replying that he would consider seriously. Fenheimer appeared pleased, praising the decisiveness behind the young man's calm demeanor. Kang Jinhyuk smiled meaningfully, raising a finger to signal a pause. He was preparing to present personal conditions, a strategic move in the important negotiation with the Empire. Fenheimer, the representative of the Caladium Kingdom, was surprised by Jinhyuk's declaration. His eyes clearly showed confusion upon hearing the phrase, "one condition." Meanwhile, elsewhere in the maze, magical traps suddenly exploded violently. A player panicked and dodged but was still hit, screaming in pain. A group of players stopped to discuss strategy. They assessed that continuing as they were would take too long to disable all traps, creating an urgent need for an alternative plan. Maria, after considering the situation, realized an undeniable fact. All events in the maze were controlled by Kang Jinhyuk, around whom all forces seemed to revolve. At that moment, Maria was suddenly drawn to a system notification. She tilted her head, staring intently at the glowing screen, her mind full of doubt. The system notification confirmed the respawn condition had changed. Players who died from traps or monsters would be sent back to the ballroom but lose all merit points. The one who caused this change was none other than Kang Jinhyuk. Some players immediately debated, if true, death might be a way out, but this sparked fierce controversy as they were unsure whether to trust the notification. Shortly after, a reckless player attacked a teammate with a sword to test the system's authenticity. The slash flashed amid the chaotic maze. Seeing the player successfully teleported back to the ballroom, the others were stunned. Although effective, everyone shuddered at the thought of being slashed to respawn. While the group's atmosphere remained doubtful, an angry shout broke the crowd's unconscious excitement. A man unable to contain his anger yelled, criticizing the carelessness of those who failed to see the true nature of the situation. That man, Liao Wei, pointed at the floating notice board, loudly warning, if hit even by a scratch, all merit points would be immediately wiped out, meaning total loss of benefits. Liao Wei's accusation quickly spread, causing uproar among the crowd. He concluded this was a conspiracy orchestrated by Jinhyuk to eliminate potential rivals in this fierce competition and gain absolute advantage. Liao Wei's eyes were full of resentment as he glanced sideways. He was bitter, feeling his efforts were undervalued while witnessing praise for Jinhyuk, the troublemaker in his view. Maria remained unshaken. She bluntly rebutted that Liao Wei understood nothing about the maze, and without Jinhyuk's power to change the rules, none of them would still be alive to talk. Another member coldly interrupted, sarcastically suggesting that if Liao Wei was so capable, he should try to conquer the maze himself. Yet he blamed everything on Jinhyuk pressing the start button, as if all misfortunes began there. With no defense left, Liao Wei fell silent, holding his forehead. He began to question himself. Could he be the fool in this entire situation? Amidst his chaotic thoughts, a mysterious voice whispered in his ear. The vague sound called his name, Liao Wei, a signal of a connection beyond the present. Before him appeared the shimmering, hazy image of Moyang Su, the leader of the opposing faction. He conveyed orders telepathically, demanding a mental reply and absolute secrecy in communication. The order came immediately. The plan had changed, and now the goal was to eliminate Kang Jinhyuk on the spot. Though Liao Wei was shocked and wondered if he had to act personally, Moyang Su affirmed his role was not confrontation but preparation for a much darker part in the plan. A ding sound echoed through the cold maze space. A blinking blue light signaled a gift had just been delivered. Old Liao Wei froze, overwhelmed by a strange emotion, as he realized it was no ordinary item. In the intermediate world, a mid-level manager appeared with a cold reminder. He affirmed that the gift was the result of special effort and demanded that Kang Jinhyuk keep his promise. The recipient could not hide his gratitude, pledging never to forget this favor. On the other side of the maze, Jinhyuk threatened the remaining group. Calmly, he declared, if even a speck of dust touched him, Goguma would devour the troublemaker. The skill's light emitted as a confirmation of his seriousness. Activating 5 Spirits Operation Mode, Jinhyuk sped off like the wind. The 5 small spirit beasts frantically performed their cart duties, trembling in fear at the prospect of being swallowed by the ancient god if their master was endangered. While still riding the spirit beasts, Jinhyuk tilted his head and smiled, praising their control abilities. The tension gave way to relief and confidence spreading across the faces of the small creatures. Suddenly, Jinhyuk's gaze shifted, catching something unusual. A flicker of suspicion lit his sharp eyes, signaling a change in the rhythm of action. He signaled to stop. With a calm attitude, Jinhyuk told the spirit beasts to rest with Goguma. The little ones, exhausted and panting from the speed and pressure, bowed their heads in thanks for the break. After taking a few more steps, his foot stopped completely. On the stone floor, a large bloodstain spread ahead, marking a gruesome scene waiting. A blood-soaked corpse lay motionless in the corridor, its body slashed and torn apart. The dried black blood reflected despair. Jinhyuk pondered, realizing this could not be the result of a trap or monster. His reasoning quickly connected the facts. If it were a monster or mechanism, the system would automatically return the player to the hall. The remaining corpse meant only one thing. This was evidence of a murder committed by another player. Kang Jinhyuk's eyes grew sharp as he concluded about the body on the floor. It was not caused by a monster or hidden trap. Without a doubt, this was evidence of a player-caused murder. This truth made the atmosphere around him icy cold and all his instincts heightened to the extreme. A blonde girl appeared, wearing a wild smile as she smelled the blood, showing clear sick fascination. The murderous couple revealed themselves, weapons ready. The blood stirred their excitement, and they prepared to strike again.